Hello and welcome to the Pike County Report. I'm Cindy Mae Johnson, your host today, and joining us on the program, as you're accustomed to by now, are our County Judge Executive Ray Jones, and we have an addition today, that's Deputy Judge Executive Reggie Hickman. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Glad to have you both.
Thanks for hosting the show, and you're a new face on the show.
I am a brand new face. I'm not a new face, just on the show. But I'm eager and glad to be here because there's so much for us to talk about. We're all residents of Pike County, and that's what this show is about. It's a way for you all to get information to the people who live and love living here and working here. There's just so much to talk about. Where do you want to even start today? I know we've had a great loss, and you want to address that.
Well, this past week, Pike County Fiscal Court consultant Charles Carlton passed away. And Charles was a former official in the Rutherford administration. He was the Industrial and Economic Development Director, and for the past several years had worked as a consultant primarily in our solid waste department. And Charles was a brilliant guy, a graduate of the University of Missouri, and his passing was pretty sudden. He had been under the weather, but none of us realized how sick Charles was. He was actually in the office one day last week, and he loved this county, and he will be missed. He was a tremendous asset, as we'll talk about a little bit later, trying to permit the landfill so we can do an expansion. He was instrumental in that. He was instrumental in helping address a lot of the environmental issues that came up at the landfill. And it's going to be a tremendous loss for the county. It will be very hard to replace his services in the fiscal court. Somebody
who has that much history and has worked that long for Pike County maybe can never be completely replaced.
Well, if anybody that knew Charles, he was a very, very smart man, and he was intellectual. And if you told him to do something or you asked him to do something, I think Judge Hickman would tell you that when you got the work product back, it would be detail, detail, detail. And, Charles was really, really an engineer. Even though he wasn't trained as an engineer, he probably had as much of a background in engineering as any engineer that came out of the University of Kentucky or University of Louisville. So it will be a tremendous loss, and if you would just ask everyone out there to remember his family and friends in their prayers, and his wife has certainly suffered a major loss. Charles had a son that predeceased him, and I know that it's going to be a very difficult time for his wife.
Well, I would agree. We all will certainly extend our prayers and condolences to the family and to all the citizens of Pike County who will feel that loss. Now, on brighter notes, because I know you do have some brighter notes, there's so much to communicate. Not all of it is happy, and you haven't been ashamed or afraid of telling the bad news when you have to. But you've got a lot to talk about today that some of it didn't sound so encouraging.
Well, what we've tried to do, and some people have said, you really don't need to talk about the prior administrations, and we've not. We've made a commitment, not to criticize prior administrations or prior elected officials, but I do think it's fair to this court in explaining our decisions and the basis for the decisions that we come to. I think it's important for people to know how we got to the point we are, where we are. And I don't think we can explain our path forward unless people understand what led us to the point we're at now.
That makes sense.
And if you look at some of the decisions that were made in the past, we're having to deal with those now. And what we're going to be talking about, particularly after the first of the year, is we're going to put try to get some business people to come together informally, some people with, backgrounds in finance and government to try to help us look at some of these issues, some of the major issues that the county will be facing. And, there's two things that this court could do. One is we could do the same kind of things that led us to where we are now, just ignore some of the major problems that are coming down the road. It was painfully obvious over years that the coal severance tax was declining year after year because coal production was declining. there was no plan put in place until all of a sudden, massive cuts had to be made. The county laid off the safety director, implemented an occupational tax. There was just a lot of really reactionary things that were done to address the falling budget revenue. What we want to do is be proactive. We want to put a plan in place, or at least a working plan, to try to address some of these problems now, or to start to address them before they get to be a crisis. And one of those problems that we're going to have to deal with is the pension contribution. Our employees at the fiscal court, the jail, are in the county employee retirement system. And right now, the county is paying right under $2 million a year. It's about $1.9 million a year to the county employee retirement system as the employer contribution. The employee puts money in, but the county has to match. And right now, for every dollar that we pay in payroll, we pay 24.06 cents to the CERS. Now, that number by 2028 goes from 24.06 to, in 2020 fiscal year, to 59 cents, over 59, I think it's 59.59 cents per dollar of payroll in 2028. That comes out to a little more than 5.2 million. So if nothing changes, no pay increases for employees, no additional hires, 8 years from now, the county will be paying an additional $3.2 million a year to the pension system, and that's not sustainable. The $3 million isn't there. And even if the county raised taxes, even if we tried to collect every penny of solid waste, delinquencies, everything we could do, we could not come up with $3 million just to meet the pension contribution.
So is there a plan in place for
Well,
that?
that's what we have to start planning for.
Okay.
I'm hopeful that the legislature will act, because it's not going to just hit Pike County. It's going to hit every county in Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky counties and western Kentucky counties in the coal fields will be decimated. A lot of counties will hit a wall before Pike County does. But nevertheless, a lot of counties don't have the budget and the size of the county that Pike County has to provide services for either. So we have to start looking for a solution to that now. Part of it will be lobbying Governor-elect Beshear and the General Assembly in the next budget, or in the next General Assembly session that starts in January. They're going to have to do something in the budget to help shore up CERS, or to give us some options, because if not, there's going to have to be a complete restructuring of county governments throughout Kentucky.
Well, it goes back to the word you used a minute ago. It'll be a crisis.
Well, it's already getting there, because if you look at, and I use this as an example, Martin County couldn't even address its own water problems. Excuse me. Knott County last winter stopped doing any road work on county roads except in emergency situations. Martin County Sheriff's Office basically had to shut down, laid off the deputies, couldn't even provide services. So we've got to ask ourselves, what level of services do we expect county governments to provide, and how do we pay for those? Because right now, we do have a major problem looming, and the pension obligation is probably the biggest.
It does sound like a big problem. And again, it's one that will affect everybody. Approximately how many county employees do we have?
In excess of 220.
And those 220 have families, so you have a multiplier there. That's just for those employees, and then that expands to impact everybody who lives in Pike County eventually.
Here's essentially what we have. We don't have a tremendous staff in the courthouse. We've got 2.5, 3 people in occupational tax office. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think, in finance and administration, counting the treasurer's office. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 in the judge's office, counting myself, Jeannie Robinson, our executive assistant, a receptionist. We have 1 other personal assistant, and then our grant administrator, Sharon Hall. And then you have about 70 plus in solid waste. about the same number, maybe give or take a few at the jail, and you have about 38 in the road department. You have 6 on each lot, plus a secretary and the road supervisor. I'm not sure, we're about 8 or 9, maybe 10 in public works. So in those, people come, people go, but it's roughly 220, give or take.
Which for a county our size doesn't sound like a lot of people.
Well, if you think about 1,200 miles of county roads, and you have 36 employees to take care of 1,200 miles of roads, and that's to do all the, everything from paving, cleaning out drains, replacing drains, pulling ditches, removing slides, trees, all the work that has to be done. 1,200 miles of county roads. It's a massive number of roads, of road mileage, and it's not a lot of people. So it is a major challenge to keep to take care of our roads, and that, I guess, could lead us to our other issue.
I was going to say, you're just making a nice segue in here to talking about roads. Do you get a lot of complaints about county roads?
We get a lot of complaints, and I try to remind people, and Judge Hickman tries to remind people, that these roads were in the same shape by and large when we came in office. And it's really not anyone's fault let me explain where we are and how we got here. At one time, Pike County had millions and millions of dollars coming back in severance tax. We got help from Frankfort. We had a guy named Paul Patton who did a lot for our county road system, both as county judge, as lieutenant governor, and then as governor. A lot of money was sent into Pike County and rural Kentucky to help with our roads. But at that time, pavement asphalt was $32, $33, $34 a ton. Well, we had a lot more revenue coming in. Well, now asphalt's $109, $110 a ton, so it's 3 times more expensive, and we have less revenue. This year, between the state flex money that we received and what the state gave us in terms of state road aid money and the money that we could supplement from the county budget, we had enough money to do roughly 18 miles of paving. Now, if 18 miles of roads get paved this year, we have 1,200 miles of roads. It's over a 60-year repavement cycle. And when I was at the last county judge executive conference, the county judges and some of the other counties were talking about, well, they were on a 30-year cycle or a 20-year cycle. Pike County's on a 60-year cycle. At the amount of money that we get right now, to repave all of our county roads would take 60 years.
So let's drill that down and put it into perspective for somebody who's currently complained, who has a problem with their road. If their road was repaved this year, at the rate we're going, when would it be touched again?
Probably long after I'm dead and gone, and you're talking at least 60 years.
60 years. That's
over 60 years.
That's a big number. That's powerful.
Well, and that's another major problem that's facing the county. Our infrastructure is aging, and without the resources and assistance from Frankfort, just to repave some of our worst roads. And what the county's done in the past is, they'll pave a whole holler. And, somebody's got some political pull, they get up road paved. Well, the problem with that is there's other roads that have major problems, and there's no money to fix them. So what we're trying to do is to identify the absolute worst places where the pavement's broken, where it's broken off, major potholes, and trying to pave those segments instead of paving entire roads. Because if you look at some roads, even old roads that haven't been paved in a while, some sections of those roads will still be in pretty good shape. Areas where you have better drainage, less truck traffic, those kind of things. But we're going to have to focus on addressing the worst roads first, and that's not always popular.
You can't always do what's popular, though, can you?
Well, everybody wants their road paved. And, I've had people on my creek that, where I live on Left Fork of Island Creek would say to me, why can't we get our road paved? You live up here. I said, well, because there are worse roads in the county, and my responsibility is to make sure that the worst roads are addressed first. So these are hard decisions, and a lot of people go on Facebook and they complain, and, we had some folks on there talking because their property tax bills came out. And I think I called Judge Hickman. I said, this is a very difficult job, made more difficult by just false information and just nonsense that people put on Facebook. talking about how their property tax bills doubled. Well, the school board didn't raise the tax rate this year. The independent schools didn't raise the tax rate. The library board didn't raise the tax rate. Judge Hickman, you're on the health department board. You didn't raise the tax.
We did not.
Didn't raise the tax rate. The fiscal court didn't raise the tax rate. So, and I've responded to people. Your taxes didn't go up. Now, what could have happened is if you had a delinquent solid waste bill and you hadn't paid it, that may be why your bill went up.
So you're saying solid waste delinquencies might be appearing on your property tax
They
bill?
have been for several years.
Okay.
The problem is the solid waste office was so understaffed when we came in. It's like you in the radio business. If you don't have people that can go out and sell, if you don't have people that can do collections, you're not going to be in business long.
Tell me about it.
They had people, they didn't have enough people in the office to do the billing, to take care of the customer service issues. So we added a couple people, and like the old saying goes, you have to spend money to make money. I think that was something your dad always said. You have to
Yeah.
spend money to make money. And when you go back and you look, we put some people on staff. This is the first year that we've been able to get through the entire book of delinquent solid waste bills. We put over 2.2 million, 2.2 million, make sure my number's right, $2.2 million in delinquent solid waste bills on the property taxes. So if your property tax went up, don't say your property tax went up. It may be because there's a delinquent solid waste bill. Now, if you watch this program, it's possible there are mistakes because, you know, it's possible that there was somebody paid, it didn't get recorded properly. If you think that the bill, the amount is incorrect, go to the office, call 432-6245, and they'll try to address that. And they'll give you the documentation that they have. If you have documentation that shows it's wrong, then we'll be happy to help on that. But, you know, last week I told you a story before we came on. I had a lady call or sent me a message on Facebook that her garbage didn't get picked up. And, you know, I apologized. And, you know, like I explained to her, I said, you know, we've got over 20,000 customers. If we have a fill-in driver or somebody that's not familiar with the route, and human errors happen, you know, you're going to have missed pickups as big as this county is. But I went to the office and checked, and I discovered that she had a $1,052 delinquent garbage bill. And I wrote her back, and I said, look, you know, we'll be out to get the garbage. We're very sorry this happened, but you have a delinquent bill. And the response was, well, I know I have a delinquent bill. I know how much my bill was, or how much my bill is. I just want my garbage picked up. And the more I thought about it, the more, I guess, upsetting that became in that, and I responded, how can we, and we can't keep solid waste running if people don't pay their bills. And if you don't pay your power bill, we know what happens. If you don't pay your water bill, we know what happens. If you don't pay your television bill, we know what happens. But there was this notion among some people that they didn't have to pay the garbage bill. And that's not fair to people like me and the vast majority of people in this county who want to live in a clean county, who want the garbage picked up, who don't want it to go back to the way it was before we had solid waste. We don't want illegal dumps on every creek and on every wide spot in the county.
Many of us remember when it was like that. And I know that hasn't been entirely eradicated, but you probably do want to give maybe some props to the man who made sure that we got mandatory solid waste picked up.
And when Governor Paul Patton, then county judge, implemented the solid waste program, it was not popular.
I remember that.
A lot of people thought, you know, that's the end of his political career. But I remember as a young boy, growing up on Indian Creek, riding up on Abner Mountain, and every wide spot, people would just pull up and throw their garbage. That was how people disposed of it. Pull up beside the creek, just throw a garbage bag in. And you know what people from outside of this area had to think when they looked at that or they saw that? And what kind of place would do that? We have made so many strides in cleaning up eastern Kentucky. You know, Congressman Rogers' Pride program. People care about, you know, most people take pride in their home. Not everybody, but most people. It's a big investment. You know, people work their entire lives to pay for a house. And, you know, they have a right not to expect their neighbors to just throw garbage out in the street or out in the yard or out in the creek. And we've cited, our solid waste enforcement officer cited over 200 people for illegal dumping since January.
That's a lot of
And-
people.
And it's shameful, and I'll use that word shameful, that people have such little regard for their friends and neighbors in their community that they'll just throw garbage out like that. But, I drove up to the house to put a suit and tie on before I came in to do we've got a court meeting tonight. And, just driving up my holler, pop bottles, beer cans, fast food wrappers. And, and we had the trash picked up not too awful long ago by inmates up my holler. And if you go up there and look at it now, you can't tell it was ever been touched.
That is a shame. You mentioned the landfill a minute ago. So can we talk a little bit about maybe some plans that are coming?
I'm gonna defer to the guy who's the brains in the county government operation and let him bring you up to speed. Judge Hickman has worked tirelessly on this, and I'll say this: I'm one political party, he's in another, but we're very fortunate that I was able to bring somebody in who has his business background and who's as smart as he is, that's willing to step up and help me address these problems, help this fiscal court. And our commissioners have been excellent to work with. They're involved, they're engaged. I think his phone was ringing at 9 o'clock last night by one of the commissioners talking about some problems. But Reggie is, has a lot of strong business background. That's something that was missing in the fiscal court for a long time. So bring us up to speed on the landfill.
Well, I think as everybody knows, we filed an intent to expand, and the state moved very rapidly with that request. So we've cleared all the paperwork hurdles to start with to expand. We had a few deficiencies, but that's common, very minor. And at this point, we're on schedule for paperwork-wise where we need to be to get the official permit to expand.
Now, what will that mean for us when we can expand the landfill?
It will mean roughly between 50 and 60 years of additional space.
That's a lot.
It's huge.
Interesting that number's cropping up again. We were talking about a 60-year cycle for the roads, and we're talking now about potentially 60 more years of being able to use that
It's
landfill.
literally millions and millions of pounds of garbage and cubic yards of space.
And are we at a place where we're getting very close right now?
No, this is the very early stages. When we get into next year, mid-year next year is when things will really begin to pick up.
What about our current capacity?
Well, our current capacity is somewhere around, I think, 3 to 4 years. Is that right, Judge?
About 3.5.
About 3.5.
Last estimate, and that was back in the late summer.
So it's a good thing that we're looking right now at what
is.
to do about it for the future.
We're on a very tight timeline with this court from where they came in. Had there been any additional delays, we probably would not have made it in time.
Let me just go back. Brian Booth, Commissioner Booth, is the city's solid waste. His day job is city solid waste supervisor. And we had the former engineering firm that did the landfill. We had some problems. There were some issues, and I'm not going to point fingers, but we started looking at their estimates, and they said we have 8 years or 9 years left. Well, if you go up and you look at the top of the liner, where they were the liner for this phase of the landfill, we're on phase 5. There were areas where the garbage was already up to the top of the liner. And Commissioner Booth took some pictures with his cell phone just over a course of a few months, and it was shocking how much material was going into the landfill. Part of it was because it was not being properly compacted. Is that a fair statement?
That's true.
There were also some problems where the prior engineers missed the elevation from phase 4 to phase 5 of the landfill. There was still about 20 feet of airspace left on phase 4 when they started phase 5 because of an engineering mistake or a surveying mistake. That cost the county quite a bit of time. So we brought this other engineering company in, an Ivy League educated, I tell him he's an Ivy League educated garbage expert. But very smart man named Tom Ramsey. And Tom came in, looked at it, and when we got the preliminary numbers, we were shocked. It was about 4, maybe 4.5 years. when he gave us the estimate. So we had been told that the state wouldn't let us re-permit this landfill. So what do? I mean, you either shut it down or you would build a new landfill. The cost of building a new landfill is not possible in this county because of permitting issues. In fact, we just don't have the money. So when we brought in this air consultant, Geosyntec, looked at it and said, well, we can re-permit this site and probably get 50 or 60 more years at an estimated 80,000 tons a year. Right now, there's about 60,000 tons a year going in it. So at 80,000 tons, we can get 50 to 60 more years. And if, it's common sense that we can dispose of our garbage here in Pike County a lot cheaper than if we have to haul it to London or Ashland. You'd have to pay somebody to, first of all, you'd have to pay to construct a transfer station, which would be $2 or $3 or $4 million. Then you'd have to hire contract haulers to haul it. Then you're going to pay some other person or entity $30 to $35 a ton to take your garbage. So there's no way that we could have done it more economically, and we felt that it would probably double, if not triple, the solid waste rates. We thought they would go into the $50 to $60 a month range if this landfill shut down. There was another problem that when we started looking at this when we came in, that by law, there's money escrowed to close our landfill. The county will be responsible for the post-closure of our landfill for 30 years after it closes. We got to looking at it. There's not enough money in the escrow account to close the landfill. So if it shuts down in 3 years, the county's probably going to be about $3 million in the hole the day it shuts down. And so we felt, Mr. Ramsey thought it would probably be a $10 million hit to the county for us to abandon our solid waste program in our landfill. The biggest mistake that's been made is failing to go to, see, our landfill is permitted to take trash from all the adjacent counties, including in West Virginia. And some people are saying, well, if we're running out of space, why should we bring other people's garbage in? Well, if you own a McDonald's, you want to sell cheeseburgers to anybody that will buy a cheeseburger. Well, the mindset was completely wrong. You want to bring all the garbage you can into that landfill, and you want to charge a reasonable rate, just like running a radio station. You want to sell ads to everybody. We need every surrounding county to bring their garbage to us, because here's what that does. The more revenue we bring in, of course it fills it up faster, but you also have money to expand it. You have money to also subsidize your collection for Pike County taxpayers or ratepayers. So the more money we bring in at the landfill from other counties, the less our residents are going to pay in garbage bills.
So once again, you're going back to basic business principles.
Basic business.
This expansion will give us 15 million cubic yards of space, and will hold approximately 9 million tons of solid waste.
Those
So
are numbers
it's
that are
just-
hard to comprehend.
They are.
But again, you have to be prepared for them, don't you?
Yes, you do.
So it's good news. We've got a few little technical things with our permit package that was sent in, but
It's all taken care of.
it's all taken care of. So
That's
we're moving
great.
forward. Now, the big issue is how we're going to pay for the expansion. Over the next 3 years, before the end of this current court's term, we're going to have to spend about $5.5 million at the landfill.
Right.
And here's the problem, and this is why some people criticized us for attacking this rate increase right up front. They came. People were criticizing. They came right in. The first thing they did is raise the garbage rates. Well, I prepared like I would when I'm getting ready for a trial. We started in May after the primary. I asked him to come on and help me. At that time, he hadn't even thought about coming into county government. We started meeting in May, open records requests, getting data. And the one thing that was obvious is there was not one penny of money that had ever been set aside by any prior administration to expand the landfill. Well, at some point, that had to be addressed, just like the pension's going to have to be addressed, just like our road problems, just like our aging infrastructure and our aging road department equipment and so forth. These issues are not going to be easy to fix. They're going to be painful. And I never came in and said that we weren't going to have to raise garbage rates. I was shocked, though, Cindy, about how many people were quick to criticize us over raising the garbage rate $7. If we, the easy thing would be to do what some of the prior folks had done and ignore it to the point where it shuts down. We're going to have to shut it down, haul it to Ashland, and when you start getting bills of $50, $60 a month, I mean, we tried to do the thing that was in the best interest of the people of this county, that would be the best long-term for people on fixed income, the best for our business community, so that we didn't harm some of our businesses like Kellogg's, like the hospital. And this was a hard decision, but there was a lot of effort put into it to try to make sure we were right and to try to make sure the number would be enough to sustain the system, but that wouldn't be so onerous that it would hurt people.
Well, you just alluded to something I want to ask you about, and I know it might be a pet peeve of yours, but you said people complained about something. And one of the things that you've shared with me in the past is that often when they complain publicly rather than contacting you or contacting your office.
It's like I said, people are on Facebook talking about how their property taxes doubled when there's no basis for that. This fiscal court, I own property here. I own a business here. I do not want to pay any more tax than I have to either. Mm-hmm. And this court, you have two other business owners on the Pike County Fiscal Court. We came in with the mindset of we did not want to raise property tax rates, and we didn't. We kept that promise. And we understand there are people who are struggling, people who've been laid off in the mining industry, people who are struggling to put their kids through school, struggling to make a house payment. And we have a lot of people in this county on a fixed income. And we wanted to make sure that we did everything we could. And that's why it's only fair if people are not paying their garbage bills, if people are not paying what they owe, that before we ask the people who are paying to pay more, the people who are not upholding their end of the deal. And it is a bargain. Or it is I'm trying to think how to say this. It is a covenant when you live in a society like ours, the greatest country in the history of the earth, that the price of living in a country like ours, the price of paying for our military, the price of paying for things like Medicare and Medicaid, the price of paying for Social Security, the price of paying for our road system, water and sewer systems that many countries can only dream of. A country where we've been so blessed, there's a price that comes with that, and it's called paying taxes. Nobody wants to pay more than they have to, but when you have people who aren't paying their garbage bills or aren't paying their taxes, it's only fair that they be held accountable before we ask others who are willing to step forward to pay more.
Seems reasonable to me. Now, you mentioned about the people who've been laid off from the mines or many other situations where we've seen our economic growth slow down or begin to go backwards. You got some data today that you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, I had a reporter sent me this, and this is the wage data for Pike County, and it goes all the way back to 1990. And I'm going to pull my phone up here because I don't have my glasses here to be a little bit easier, but just to give you some of the data. And this is interesting. Between 2011 and 2017, the total wages for Pike County declined from $259 million in 2011 to $225 million through the end of 2017. Of course, this data is almost a couple years old. Mining wages decreased from $74.7 million to $24.8 million during that time. Mining in 2017 accounted for 11% of all wages in the county, down from 28% in 2011. And healthcare, on the other hand, increased dramatically from $50.3 million in wages in 2011 to $79.6 million in 2017. As a share of all wages, healthcare increased from 19% to 35%. So this data is about 2 years old. I think there's two things that we could probably safely say. That the percentage of wages paid from the mining industry and the amount has continued to go down, and the healthcare segment has continued to grow. Conversation that we frequently have is the growth in the healthcare industry sustainable with the population loss that we are seeing? When I was in high school, in the county school system, there's 20,000 kids. Now there's it may even be a little under 8,000 this year.
Boy, that's a big change.
It's a big change, and we've been working on the 2020 census. That's something we'll be talking about in this program down the road. The 2020 census is coming up in March. I think it starts in April. It's very important that we get people to participate. Why? Because that data is used for things like healthcare funding, education funding, transportation funding. And the more population that we lose, we're likely in Eastern Kentucky to lose 2 House seats in the General Assembly and maybe a Senate seat because of the growth in Central Kentucky, the Golden Triangle, and the depopulation in the West and the East. But in 1980, we were 81,000 people in this county. It's projected that we're going to be in the low 50,000, 52, 53,000 range. That's a tremendous amount of population loss in 4 decades.
It is, and I think you make some very good points, very valid points about how important it is for people to participate in that census. They may have never really realized what it could mean. It feels kind of like a passive exercise. Somebody asks questions and you fill out a form, but it actually could be pretty important.
Well, it's going to be important because, the lower our population goes, the less clout we're going to have in Frankfurt, the less clout we're going to have in Washington. And think about this. Our county doesn't get any smaller. We're not going to have fewer road miles because we lose people. But when we lose solid waste customers, when we lose taxpayers, we're going to have fewer people to shoulder the burden of paying for our schools, paying for county government, paying for the services that we depend on, like our volunteer fire departments. And that's going to be a very, to me, that's probably the biggest challenge that the county's going to face in the next decade.
Now, one other topic I really feel like I want to throw out to you, because I've heard some buzz about it, and you were talking about it when you all arrived today. You've been getting some citizen concerns, I guess, about cable.
We have had, and it started on Facebook. This is probably, somebody tags me in a post on Facebook, and the next thing you know, there's dozens of people chiming in. The county previously had a cable TV franchise administrator. That person also was the county's purchasing director. Well, when we came in, there was no person in either position. We didn't have anybody overseeing purchasing, and we didn't have anybody addressing these cable TV issues. Suddenlink apparently sold to a company. It's now owned by a company called Altus. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I think you're a Suddenlink customer, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
He's a Suddenlink customer. I'm fortunately not. We have had at least 75 people email Vince Ratliff, who works in the judge's office. Vince is a retired manager from AT&T. He's been actively involved in this. We've had, if you look at the people that's contacted us on Facebook, email, phone calls, it's well over 100 people. Trouble with their TV, trouble with their internet. One gentleman who's a friend of mine who's disabled called me, paid $192 or $96 hookup fee. Never came and hooked him up, but yet he's getting a monthly bill.
Wow.
That's fraud. Mm-hmm. And I'll say that. And, at some point, if this continues, we've reached out to Suddenlink and the parent company. And if we don't start getting some answers and some attention, we're going to meet with our lady named Linda Ain, who has provided, she's a telecommunications law expert. We're hopefully that we don't have to go that route, but that's the next step, is that we're going to reach out to our counsel on this. We're trying to do it through I guess, appropriate channels before we go the legal route, because it will be expensive for the county to have to do that. The big problem is if Suddenlink were to pull out, there's no guarantee that somebody steps in there and takes over that market. And there's quite a few people here in the city and throughout the county that have Suddenlink service, but the stories that we're hearing are horror stories. People who've been out of service for days and weeks, and
their bill doesn't get adjusted.
No, it does not. And those are some issues that the next step will be to go to Linda Ain, our attorney, and then to address it through the Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division, because people deserve to receive what they're paying for.
The takeaway here is there is an ear that's listening in your office. not just about that, but about other issues as well, and that you welcome people who come to you with those kind of situations.
And that's what we would prefer, is that people, rather than going on Facebook and, making a stink or spreading false information about their taxes going up, if there's an issue, and look, there may be first of all, we don't send the tax bills out. That's not the judge's office. If there's a problem with a solid waste bill, if there's a problem with customer services, if there's a road problem, if people let us know, we will do our best to address it. That's something that I take very much pride in, is if you call and you don't get service from the Pike County Judge Executive's office, it will be addressed. And if it's not addressed by the employee, they won't be working there very long. And
That's plain spoken.
my job is to provide the best leadership for this county that I can, to make wise, informed decisions. Am I going to be right every time? Absolutely not. And there's times that we disagree on issues, and there's times that, he'll point out something I didn't think about. And that's the worst thing you can have when you're in business, is somebody that tells you, or you're in government, to tell you what you want to hear. You better have people around you in any business or in any organization that will be honest with you and help you think through some of the challenges you're facing. And we've got a really good team. Do we make mistakes? Absolutely. But we will do our best to address those if we know about them. But just because somebody complains on Facebook doesn't mean we're ever going to hear about it.
So if you want results, you need to go right to the source.
The judge's office number is 432-6247. There's a complaint process. Every complaint that comes in, if it's solid waste, I get a copy, Judge Hickman gets a copy, the solid waste manager gets a copy. If it's a road issue, it goes to the road supervisor, to me, Judge Hickman. Same thing for Public Works. If it's an issue, we have a process, and I've got a book, a 3-ring binder on my desk. When the problem's addressed, we mark it off and we put it in the back of the book. So we know what's being addressed, and we know and we're doing things different than they've been done in the past. We're keeping spreadsheets on our road work so we can track what's scheduled, what's in the process of being done, what's been done.
I think that's a great point for us to end on, because that phone number, I want to make sure that I drive home, 606-432-6247, right?
That's correct. And they can connect you to who you need to talk to.
So I'm going to remind everybody watching, call that number. Don't just complain on Facebook. You have people who want to hear what your questions and your problems are and want to deal with them, right?
Absolutely.
And maybe next month we'll tackle some more of those. I certainly thank you all for letting me be part of the program.
It's great to have you, and we appreciate you being willing to host this program.
Thank you. That's going to do it for this edition of the Pike County Report.